dilemma of whether to be the early bird or the wise owl, as in should we, like, who wins the race to begin with? So usually there's a myth that says that the ones who pioneer, walk into, have the usually win the game, and now that's an outdated myth is what they say. What's your opinion on that?
I think it's a combination of factors, and there is really nothing like a black and white answer to that. We've seen history open up where we've seen early risers win the race, early movers win the race, and we've also seen so many industries or organizations start early, but because of the wrong timing, they've not been able to get to the place that they want. So I think it's a combination of time, it's a combination of depth of opportunity, which is very closely related to time, and it's a conscious choice of the quantum of risk one can take. For example, you want to buy a car, and then you can take that risk. But if it's going to be an organization, then being a Capricornian me, I will wait for the first movers and then make my entry.
I don't think you can ever come with a definitive answer. The only folks that that deal with the situation where either they're in a first mover or they are the ones that are following can answer this for themselves, because both have certain advantages and certain disadvantages. So I can give you an example without naming companies in the taxi space. So there was a company that was a first mover, raised a bunch of money, and really took the lead, and then followed the second. Everybody thought the second will get wiped out, but there was an event that there was a black swan event that happened, which sort of made sure that the second company was able to raise more money and then wipe out the first company, right? So sometimes these things are not just based on who sets it first versus who's able to crack it better. It's a set of combinations. The first mover definitely has the advantage of being able to raise more capital. They are able to solve the problems faster, so that becomes a little bit of a flywheel where they get momentum with respect to people, with respect to their own execution machinery. Because in a startup, things don't move in a linear fashion, so they tend to sort of follow a geometric or a non-linear fashion. So whoever has the greatest momentum sort of gets farther ahead. But on the flip side, if you end up making a lot of mistakes, you end up burning a lot of money and you start becoming more and more expensive, while the organization that follows you is able to solve the same problem or get ahead with far lesser amount of money, and they become more attractive for somebody to invest. So I guess the answer over here for me would basically be who can execute faster and better, and who can be more resilient to the curveballs that life throws at you as you're sort of dealing with this.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Right, yeah. No, I was just thinking, right? What do you mean by winning? So when you say win the race, what do you mean by winning? Like winning over 10 years, 20, 30 corporations existed? Yeah, it's a tough one, right? So given a choice, I would always want to be the first mover, because I think it's an exciting space to be in for all the reasons that you mentioned. But you've got to embrace that, right? You've got to embrace the fact that you're going to make mistakes. You've got to embrace the fact that you have to be agile and fast and quick. But it's fun while doing it, right? So, and look at all the series of disruptions that have happened have largely been caused by the first mover companies. Now, they may not remain in leadership position, and there are a variety of factors. It's culture, it's so many different things, right, which define whether you will be in existence 20 years from now or 10 years from now or not. So again, the definition of like who wins the race, but it's a very exciting time. I think winning the race is if you change the dynamic, right? So if there was no aggregated home delivery, now there's aggregated home delivery. They've already won the race. Now whether they go on to IPO and they build out a really big corporation and it's profitable or not is a secondary thing, right? That's a very investor sort of mindset over a long-term horizon. But I think they're successful. I think you've won because you changed if that was your intent, if your intent was to transform a market, you won.
Yeah.
Like who's to say you're not, right? So at least that's sort of my perspective.
So for me, there are three elements that I think determine winning the race and the innovation strategy. As several of you pointed out, first mover is going to systematically take much higher risk compared to the fast follower. It's inherent because you are entering and you are taking those risks. History, if you look at technological innovations, you will have your hype cycles, and the first movers will make money during that hype cycle. And that's what I think Sandeep was referring to. That's when you make money in the shortish time frame. And then subsequently realization and people learn from the mistakes that you were referring to. And that's when the real money is made over a longer period of time. And these two phases are dominated by different players. The first phase will be first mover phase. The second phase will be dominated by the fast followers. That's generally the case. Now, there are two other elements that I would bring in, and that is industry specific. Now, there are certain industries which are slow moving industry. I spent most of my career in manufacturing space. There, things don't move fast in months. It's a decade arc of technology and innovation. And we have seen that small incremental changes in those industries, time is not a factor. Time is just not a factor. As long as you get it right, you will capture the entire market globally compared to those small 2-month advantage or 3-month advantage that you get by going to market faster. So industry also depending on the change of rate of industry. And the third element for me is the kind of innovation we are talking about. There are several kinds of innovation, you are very well. And that's interesting that technological innovation is the only thing that is protected by law. So if you've made a technological innovation, which the international patent treaty allows you to protect, that's where the first move advantage can be significant advantage. Other innovations can be easily copied. So for me, apart from the fun element that you talked about, it's exciting, it's fun. But from a business perspective, the amount of risk you are taking and the amount of returns that you're getting by being the first follower or by being the first mover does not make financial sense for me. The emotional fun quotient, no doubt. But depending on industry, depending on kind of innovation, depending on whether you want to have a long-term interest.
Sure. So, like everyone said, there's no black and white answer to this question. And it all depends on the people who are running the business and how well they can execute. It's as simple as that. But it's not easy to determine, who will be able to execute. So we thought in India that e-commerce market has been won by, let's just say, Flipkart or Amazon. But now new players are emerging, doing things differently. And it seems like, now Amazon and Flipkart has to copy that. Otherwise, they will be left behind, at least in grocery category and maybe other categories also. Now again, when you think about large companies who have come from nowhere to that stage, they are aware of market forces. They are aware of new innovations, but often they are slow to adapt those. And there are good reasons for those also. Firstly, when you are a large company and you look at the new innovation, you feel like the market is small, or maybe there aren't enough margins in that business, or you have your own hierarchy to get approvals. So they kind of like lag behind, and these startups who are able to execute it fast are able to reach at a scale. And again, like some of you said, winning once is relatively easy but winning consistently is really hard. So as per the data that we have from US companies, only like 1% of companies survive or at least be in Fortune 500 for more than 100 years.
Yeah.
So if your time horizon, like he talked about, is 100 years, which most people think about, you just can't bet on a single company given the data. But if it is like 1 year time frame, then of course the early mover will have an advantage. But if you talk about 2 years or 3 years time frame, then it is ultimately on the guys who are on the execution side and who are able to move fast despite challenges. So like if we look at companies like Amazon or Apple or even to some extent Intel a while ago, they said we need to be ahead of the competition even before the competition introduces something. So Amazon earlier said, hey, we will be able to deliver in 5 days. But Jeff Bezos said, ki, we want to make delivery in 3 days. There was no real need for him to do that, but he did that. Similarly, when Amazon went into AWS business, they didn't need to necessarily slice the price because there was, but they said we need to basically be able to reduce the price so that we are far ahead of whatever competition comes in. Now that is a very different thought process that you need to have in your space to basically grow. Otherwise, there always will be these first mover companies who could come in and disrupt you. So again, short term winning, long term winning is really an important question that we should ask ourselves, and what is some company aspiring to do.